Hello, everyone. I'm Brad Edwards with a behind-the-scenes look at a CBS 2 investigation coming up tonight after the CMT Music Awards on CBS 2. It's about a grieving family's fight for answers about the night police shot and killed one of their loved ones, and another family member also wound up dead. CBS 2 investigator Dave Savini has been working on the story. Dave, as we've known in so many of these cases, it all comes really down to the body cameras.
Yeah, Brad. Body cameras and transparency, or the lack thereof. Now, the Will County Sheriff's Department has repeatedly denied this family's request and ours to see the body camera video. They do have from the night 70-year-old Eldrid Wells Sr. and his 21-year-old grandson were killed. The incident happened more than 5 months ago, November 6, 2021, following a 911 call for help involving a mental health crisis the grandson was going through.
On this quiet street in Joliet Township,
units responding to Middle Tree.
A mental health crisis is unfolding in the dining room of this home.
67, we need multiple items. We have stab victims and gunshot victims.
It was very chaotic.
A grandfather and his beloved grandson.
What did you see inside the home?
I don't want to talk about it.
This is such an emotional case. The task force investigating this case says they can't turn over the video or the records because it's an ongoing investigation. But the transparency here is critical. Police agencies are required to turn over public records and body camera video in a timely manner, with the exception of some circumstances. It's also important because in this Will County case, we learned something officials never told the public. And here's a bombshell. The grandfather was actually shot 2 times, 2 gunshot wounds, 1 gunshot to his palm side of his hand and 1 gunshot wound to his back. What happened? Why? The officials still haven't told us. And Brad, you know, one of the things about this case is this was a mental health crisis. The grandfather and the grandson had already been in the hospital for an attempted self-harm incident just about 10 days earlier. They knew, they responded to that case, that call for help back then too. So they were advised that he had been going through a mental health crisis at the time. And he had, the call went out as he had a knife and the grandfather was arguing with him. They were arguing about the knife. And police get there. And there is a witness, there's a brother that was there, and he says police came with their weapons out. And
Wow.
Next thing you heard was gunfire.
So the call was about potentially the grandson going through the mental health crisis, and the grandfather ends up being shot in the back.
Right, right.
I mean, that just says, wow, there's a lot of questions here.
Well,
so this started out.
But I do want to say something about the mental health crisis aspect of this. You know, police are supposed to be trained to de-escalate situations, especially in mental health crisis situations. And did this happen here? We know from public records that the only thing we know is that there was a press release, and we're going to get to that, but at 4:07 p.m., they said they arrived on the scene. The Will County Sheriff arrived on the scene. At 4:08, a paramedic report says they were already, the injuries had already happened. The boy, the young boy, the grandson, had been shot 15 times, 3 to the head and 12 to the body in that short period of time.
So in part, this story is kind of mind-boggling in how it even began. It started with a press release, a narrative that came out.
Correct.
And, you know, and part of that is you debunking that narrative. Of course, we've got to watch much more tonight coming up at 10 o'clock. But how did you then, when a press release comes out, I mean, really, we as journalists kind of take that as, okay, these are the facts. These are the nuts and bolts that happened today. And you basically found out that just is not the case. So how did you start to peel this onion?
So the family reached out to us because they know that we do these types of investigations, police accountability. And as we listened to their story, we started to try to see what we could get. As always, we asked them what they were able to get, which was nothing. They got 0. The only thing they got was a medical record involving the grandfather and an ambulance report on what the paramedics saw when they got there. And those paramedic reports and the ambulance records and the hospital records were so important because we were able to start piecing together that when the sheriff department said 5 months ago that the grandson, Jabbar Muhammad is his name, he was 21, that he was stabbing the grandfather when they arrived, and they had to shoot him. They said they tried to de-escalate it, but again, we're talking about a minute here. I don't know how much de-escalation was happening. That's why the family wants to see the body camera footage. The press release is just what the police department, the sheriff's department wants to tell us. Why not show the family? They even said, show us the body camera footage privately. You don't have to put it out into the public. Let us see so we can have some closure. How did Eldrid Wells Sr. get 2 bullet holes? I mean, the authorities had the weapons. The grandson had a knife. They had the guns.
You've done a lot of stories on body camera usage, namely sometimes it's, how critical it is in CPD cases and how often it is you're roadblocked when it comes to looking into these things. Did you find obviously similar instances here?
So, we've spent years examining body camera footage from so many cases, and as we all know and as we all learned from the Anjanette Young case, that wrong raid, there was body camera footage that was available, but they refused to give it to Anjanette Young, and they refused to give it to CBS 2. We put a Freedom of Information Act request in. She put one in. And so because of that case, at least in Chicago, there is an executive order by the mayor, Luery Lightfoot, that if you are the victim of something and there's body camera footage, you have a right to ask for it and to get it. By filing a Freedom of Information Act request with COPA. Now, Will County Sheriff's Department just got body cameras last year. I'm told that this is the very first body camera case that they have of a police-involved shooting in that county. They spent $1 million to give all of these officers, these sheriff deputies, body cameras out there. That's just part of the process. Having the camera is just part of the process. You also have to have a program to go along with it, an accountability program, a monitoring program. Are we going to give it to the public? Are we going to be transparent? Are we going to let people see this? There's a task force investigating this. It's the Will Grundy County Task Force. So they're kind of handling the outside investigation of the police-involved shooting to see if everything was done correctly. Now, everything might have been done correctly. The family's not saying that it was that way. They're just saying they want to know. They need closure. That's the same task force that we want to remind you was in charge of investigating the Joliet case involving Eric Luery, the case that we uncovered, and his family had no idea that there was video footage of him, police footage of him, basically dying in the back of that squad car and not getting help when he needed it. He was being slapped, had a baton put into his mouth, and then he dies. Okay, so that's a big federal lawsuit now. This one is going to turn into a lawsuit as well. Family's going to sue because they're going to sue for the records. They want the records. They feel like they have a right to know. And so it doesn't make them feel any better that it's the same task force that essentially did nothing in the Eric Luery case until we broke the story. It was 5 months later there too. And then people started to get disciplined.
Yeah, and then you with the Eric Luery case, you of course broke it. You got exclusive body camera video. There was a police whistleblower that he was retaliated against. I mean, that case really underlines more than any body cameras are only really a scintilla of the issue. I mean, first you need to have the body cameras. Right. Then you need to make sure your officers turn them on, which is a huge issue. And then you need to have a policy about what you do when crimes happen. Do you immediately hand them over? What bodies? But there needs to be policies and procedures that are followed. Clearly what you're saying here is it's almost a blank slate. Sure, they have them, but nothing else. Now, yep. I know we'll go into that tonight at 10. Final question is, I'm just kind of scribbling this down as I'm thinking here. So this is a case here, and I know I'm talking with you and your producer. You actually visited the home. Mm-hmm. You went there. You talked. Obviously you talked to everyone, but you went there. Did you find anything significant when you went to the home?
Yeah. So the home has been vacant since the shooting. The grandfather lived there with the grandson and another grandson. No one's living in the home right now. No one's been in the home other than a few people to clean the scene, mop up the floors and things. When I was there, I inspected the entire place. And lo and behold, what do I find within just a foot or so from where their bodies were laying after the gunshots? A bullet casing, a shiny bullet casing sitting there on a desk that anyone should have seen. how thorough was this investigation by the task force if there's a bullet casing sitting there? Now, they're telling us that it appears, because we informed them about they were informed about the bullet casing. We never touched it, but they got it. They have it now. And they're saying it appears that that bullet casing was not related to this scene. The family says that Grandpa didn't have a gun. Whose bullet casing is this? And how does a bullet casing not get picked up from a crime scene with at least 17 gunshots? You got to collect all those casings. And they're supposed to run ballistics. Now they're going to run ballistics on this bullet casing, but again, they say they don't believe it was related to the shooting. So now we have to take their word for it, right? They're the same agency that is not being transparent with the police reports, with the body camera footage, didn't tell anybody that Grandpa was actually shot 2 times. We just found that out 5 months later. And we also aren't being given the autopsy report from the coroner. They're keeping that under wraps too. Imagine you lose your grandfather and you lose your grandson, you lose your child, you lose your uncle, and you lose your dad, and you can't get closure because they won't let you see what happened. You have the perfect apparatus to show everybody. It's a camera on their chest that's going to be that eye in the room that will let them see what happened.
Yeah, we're going beyond that too, not just the cameras. Because sometimes shows can be delicate, but to not even get an autopsy, it's mind-boggling.
And Eldrid Wells Sr., this is a man who grew up in Mississippi. He was one of 11 children. He was the first one in this family to go to college, got a chemistry degree, was the quality control manager at a chemical company in the Joliet area for 36 years and retired. He was the go-to to everybody in that family. He took care of his grandchildren. He was caring for his 21-year-old grandson, Jabbar, who he knew was struggling with a mental illness. And the family believes he was calling for help, not that he was afraid that he was going to be stabbed, but he was worried that his grandson might hurt himself.
And this is what happened. And we'll find out more about what happened. Dave, really look forward to it. And this is one of the stories Dave does that you will certainly be hearing about in the forthcoming days. Tonight on the CBS 2 News at 10, we'll take you inside the crime scene for the first time as the fight continues to find out what really happened in this house. Don't miss our exclusive CBS 2 investigation. Dave Savini and his team of producers right here after the CMT Music Awards. Dave, we'll see you then.